Our next Christmas card is going to be this wintry, warm cabin scene. And this one is challenging. This one is challenging because the darks need to be dark enough, and you really have to mix up quite a bit of paint in order to get the darks. At the same time, because we want it dark, it's not going to be as wet on the paper surface in order to help the paint spread. Yeah, so in order to keep it dark enough, we can't soak the paper, which is normally what you would use with one of these gradated washes. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to try it a couple of different ways. We're going to wet the back because I think that might help if the back is at least somewhat damp, putting some moisture into it. So let's start with that step. I'm just going to flip this over. Oh, and by the way, I masked it. I masked in a star here, a Christmas star. And I also masked in the stars in the background just by splashing masking here and there. And then I masked the windows on the cabin and the roof. Ground, we won't need to mask any of that. And the only other thing I would say is maybe erase this line on the ground. I just put it there so you could see where the light is. We don't really need that, this one either. Okay, that's it. Let's flip her over. We will wet it first with the spray, and then we're going to take our big wash brush and we're going to do this. Okay. And I don't want it to curl, so it's important that we let it sit here for a minute, flat, and kind of press it down with the brush. And that way it won't start curling up as if it's evenly wet everywhere. And we're just pressing it down a bit. Okay. That's going to help us when we have to do that wash. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over, but before I flip it over completely, I'm going to dry off the board. And now flip it over. And now I'm going to clip it down so that it doesn't curl up with these bulldog clips. That should hold fairly good. And then we're just going to give this a light spray. And that way when we put our paint on, it's going to go on fairly good. Now for this, you need a brush that you're used to using for washes. We're going to start with the ultramarine, and we need a little bit of neutral tint put into the ultramarine so that it has kind of a steel blue at the top. And because we've got a new brush that we just dipped into the water, I am also making sure that that brush has got some fresh paint on it before I start. I'm going to take these off for a second. We'll put them back on after we finish. So we're going to put that nice dark color all the way across here. And then I'm going to go more into the ultramarine and cobalt. So I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine to the brush and going right across with that as well. Can probably go back up here just to keep everything flowing. I'm adding a tiny bit more water Now I'm going into the cobalt. Okay, so that's my cobalt. And then I'm adding a tiny bit of water. And I'm going to go into the cerulean. Okay. Okay. Just working my way down here. Adding a little bit more water as I move down. And then on the snow, I'm just going to collect the cerulean. And I'm looking at the picture, and I really only want to do this side of the painting and this side of the painting with that. Okay, I'm going to remove these again. I got a hair on here, so I'm going to get rid of that. So I might add a bit more of this cobalt mixture over here. And down in this corner. Maybe even some of the darker as we go here. Okay, and same with over here. It's quite dark in this area. Collecting all that paint. And now I'm rinsing off my brush. Getting all of the color that I can out of it. And I'm just going to go in with plain water, starting in the middle where I want it to stay white. And reaching out. Again, I'm going to get some fresh water. So I do want this to be white here. Okay. And I'm going to just, oops, that didn't work so well. Okay. Need some cleaner water. And I'm just going to clean off this too, because I noticed that my mask wasn't really applied that evenly. Oops, I keep going back in with this dirty brush. Let me just change my water. I'll be right back. A good shine of white on it. And I think that's okay there. I think we're okay there. This is a little rough here, so we'll just bring that across a little bit. When we do the trees, they're behind the cottage. They're going to come down, or the cabin, they're going to come down to about there. So you could also extend that a little bit if you wanted to. Okay, and that's it. Hopefully that's dark enough. If I look at it, it's not really as dark, is it? So if it's still damp enough, you could go in with another layer at the top there, but your mixture has to be very thick or Prussian. So I'm trying to mix a thick mixture, hoping that I'm still nice and wet there. Adding Prussian and ultramarine, and I think I'm going to add some neutral tints. So that looks pretty dark. And then I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to test it right here. See if that is going to go across. Not really. So I could try a little spritz. I think I need a little bit more water on here. So let's see. Not bad, but it's not getting much darker, is it? Ultramarine. Okay. I want want this to be really dark so that these stars show up. Okay, let's give it a little spritz around this area. Okay. Seem to be getting a little bit better. I'm okay with it's a little lighter around this star. Okay, I'm going to try a bit more neutral tint, a bit more Prussian up in here. A bit more neutral tint, bit of Prussian. Okay. Try that. I'm just going to go over top of that. I don't want it to look weird around it. Okay. And again, a little spritz from far away. Okay. A bit better, I think. Let's have a look. We're getting there. See that there is a hair up here. It could be very annoying. Trying to get underneath it. I thought I had it. I do not. Okay, we got it. All right, and then we'll just go back in. That should do it. Okay. Well, we let that dry. We're going to try to mix our darkest dark. So we're just going to work with the combination that we were already working with. So I'm going to use neutral tint, probably a little bit of this Prussian neutral tint. And then we're going to add a bit of burnt sienna to it in order to get that black that we need. And it has to be at least 2 values darker than what we already did, or we won't get enough coverage. So you really have to put a lot of paint into this. It's critical that it has a lot of paint, and we have a lot to cover. Okay, so lots of neutral tint, lots of ultramarine, maybe some Prussian. I think that whole well, if you have this size of well, the whole well needs to be filled. Well, we let that dry. We're going to try to mix our darkest dark. So we're just going to work with the combination that we were already working with. So I'm going to use neutral tint, probably a little bit of this Prussian neutral tint. And then we're going to add a bit of burnt sienna to it in order to get that black that we need. And it has to be at least 2 values darker than what we already did, or we won't get enough coverage. So you really have to put a lot of paint into this. It's critical that it has a lot of paint, and we have a lot to cover. Okay, so lots of neutral tint, lots of ultramarine, maybe some Prussian. I think the whole well, if you have this size of well, the whole well needs to be filled. There's my burnt sienna going in. It really makes it come out nice and dark, but you have to be careful because you don't want it to look brown. Okay. So, do you think that's going to cover the page? I don't think so. We're going to keep going. Okay, burnt sienna, I can just spritz these colors and not add any more to the well. Okay, I think we're almost there. Maybe give it a little spritz. And then I'm going to take whatever brush I'm going to paint with, which is kind of the debate. When you're doing the bottom, you can use a much bigger brush. So I'm probably going to use, I might use this one, or I'll probably use this Escoda. So what I'm going to do is wet the Escoda, go into the neutral tint, go into the ultramarine, go into the, so that this brush gets all the colors deep inside it as well. Okay. So let's work from this side. So this is going to define the bottom of the snow. My paper is still a bit damp, so it is running a bit. But I want to get this base in for the trees, and I want to get around my house here. Okay. And I can see that it's pretty good coverage. If you mess up like I just did, it's going to have to be a bit shorter there. Okay, so this is all the base. I'll go back and get some more paint. Okay, spread that around a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to start identifying where my trees are. Start on this side. Lost some of them here. I think this goes way up on that side. Okay, trees are in here. So now what I do is I just go kind of like this. I might use a smaller brush for this part, so I can get more texture into that, just at the top. And then back to my bigger brush that I was using. Okay, smaller brush. It's okay if there's little holes here too, that always looks nice. Not too many holes at the bottom though. Okay, more paint. As we're going to get up quite high here. And we don't want hard edges, so just go around every once in a while and put some more paint there. Okay. All right, I think I've run out of paint already. Yeah, pretty much. It's very wet up here, so all of these are kind of being faded out, which I'm okay with. Okay. All right, we're going to go up the top again. Okay. All right. Okay, that's that. And then in order for it to look a little bit foggy there, I'm going to add a tiny bit of lavender in the middle of this. Okay, it's just going to add some texture and etc. Okay, so we did run out of paint. We have to try and match this color. So ultramarine, neutral tint, Prussian, burnt sienna, more Prussian, neutral tint, ultramarine, more Prussian. I'm looking at it, it's pretty close, but we'll go one more round. A little spritz. We have to finish with Prussian though. Okay, all right, so let's continue on. I'm going to start with this one. Okay. Now we're probably okay to do the cabin. And the way to do the cabin is to start with the windows. We did put some little bit of mask on them, but just put a glow around the windows. Like so. And then the cabin's very warm on the front. So we're just going to mix a bit of burnt sienna with that gamboge. Okay. It's a bit darker up here, but let's do this. Okay, and over here, like so. Okay, and then it's darker right at the top of this. Quite dark in here. Okay, it's probably way darker down here too. I'm just going to put that in. And then go back to the color we had. Actually, we're going to put a bit of dark with the burnt sienna. This is quite dark here, in fact. It's not getting much light. Okay, so it's down like that. And then we're going to put some of that black in there. Just have it go right into the trees. Okay, and then here, it's black, going down here, and it's a bit lighter over here. Okay, it looks welcoming anyway. This has to go into the trees. Okay. Look for dots here. Fill them in. Okay. Looking good. All right. I realized that I wasn't recording when we did the path. So we're going to do the path just on a plain piece of paper. And I did a little diagram up here. I'm just going to copy that and make my path first with water. And then I have mixed up on my palette some color. I've got some neutral tint here. I've got some ultramarine. I've got some cobalt. Maybe a little bit of cerulean. Okay. And some purple. Okay, and that's what's going to make my path. So I put the water on, but first I'm going to take the cerulean and just go down so that I can see where I made the path. I kind of messed up the path there, but let's just assume that that part isn't sticking out. Okay, and then we go down with the cerulean. And the path, of course, gets wider as it gets closer to you. Okay, and then I'm going to take some color. So let's take some cobalt first. I'm just going to drop that in where I put the wet in earlier. Okay, so cerulean, cobalt, and just skip a few spots, maybe just dab it in like that, and then go in with your ultramarine, do the same thing, skip a few spots. Okay, and that's good. And then it's darker on this side, so I'm just going to add some dark, and then I'm going to go back with just water because I want to keep it moving there. And then I'm also going to take some water and put it on the opposite side if there's any hard edges here that I want to get rid of. Okay, and then go back through my colors again. Don't put too much dark at the top. You can put lots at the bottom. Okay, and here you can make it look like little footsteps if you like. Gradually fading out. Oh, it just lost power. Oh, my phone stayed going though. Okay. So now we bring that down and then add a little bit of purple here and there. This side seems like it's much darker. It's okay if there's little white spots here and there. Okay, put that in. A little bit of cobalt up here, but not too much. We want that to be very subtle there. And here's some footsteps here. Okay. So that's it. That is how you would do your path. If it's looking funny, just add some more water and it will help move things around. If it's hard-edged, it's okay if it's hard-edged in a few spots, but just fade it out in others. And then as the ground, oh, power went off again. Off and on, off and on. I guess there's a storm going on there. Okay, so now we're just going to add the blue and have it merge with that. See if I can get my light back on. There we go. The joys of living in Port Sarpin. Okay, so that's that. That's how you do your path. All right, we're back to our snow scene, and the only thing that has to be done with this is we need to take the masking off. My star is slightly crooked, so I'm not sure what we're going to do about that. We'll see how it goes. We'll take the stars off and then go from there. Okay, so hopefully we got enough stars in our sky. It is a good idea to have a few bigger ones. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Yeah, I think we probably could have done with a few more bigger ones as we went. Our star itself is a little harsh in the sky, So we're just going to soften it out a little bit. I'm going to put my cloth right on the board so I'm ready to roll. I'm going to clip this down. Make sure my clips aren't dirty. And then I'm just going to go around here from the inside first and soften out this inside. I'm going to go frequently into my water and my paper towel. This part here, just rub that out a little bit. And then this part up here, just softening it a bit. Here I could move it over a little bit so it doesn't look so crooked. Still gonna look crooked, but okay. And do the same over here. Yeah, so it just looks like it's glowing a bit. And this one's going to be extended out a bit. Okay, I also used a gel pen, one of these pens, to do some additional stars in the sky. This is a Jelly Roll 8, but you have to do this a couple of times for it to actually show up. And you can straighten out some of these lines if you wanted to. We masked some of the building, but now it looks too white. We need to add some yellow back into that. So I'm just gonna pop a bit of yellow here and there. And start with the lemon yellow. And then we're also gonna add some gamboge. But leave a tiny bit of white in there too. Like they're maybe at the top, so it's nice and bright. And just like a little bit of white here and there. There we go. And I think the white, the yellow in the snow doesn't show up that much. But in order to add more yellow, you should wet the snow first. I still have a little bit of yellow on my brush, so that's kind of coming out a little bit. But you don't want too much, just a bit. Bit of glow right close to the building. And then taper it off. Okay, there we go. Done.